the dignity of your life. That's your job to protect. But here's the thing. Some people make that job a full-time gig. You know the ones. They slip in a sarcastic comment at dinner, take a cheap shot during a meeting, or crack a joke that somehow leaves you feeling about this big. And in that moment, there's that silence, that burning feeling in your chest. You smile like it's fine, but deep down, you're wondering, why? Why me? Do I look like the official punching bag? You don't, and it's not you, it's them. And today, I'll tell you why they do it. 6 reasons, in fact. More importantly, I'll show you how Stoicism, yes, ancient wisdom from guys in togas, can help you rise above it. No yelling, no revenge plots. Tempting, but no. Just calm clarity and unshakable self-respect. So if you're tired of swallowing your pride and ready to stand tall, comment yes, hit subscribe, tap that bell, and let's dive in. Reason 1. They sense weakness. Some people test boundaries the way predators test prey. They don't announce themselves. They watch, they wait. And the moment they sense hesitation, the second they see you doubt your own worth, they move in. They strike where it hurts. Sometimes with a comment that seems casual, sometimes with a joke that cuts deeper than you care to admit. And if you let it pass, if you sit there in silence, pretending it's fine, they take it as an invitation to go further. They don't stop on their own. They stop when you show them you're not the person they thought you were. I remember a time early in my career when I worked under a manager who had a sharp tongue. Not the witty kind, the cruel kind. The kind that found your insecurities and pressed on them like a bruise you thought you'd hidden. During meetings, he'd throw in comments like, "Maybe this is a little advanced for you," or "We'll let you catch up later," always with a smirk. At first, I laughed it off because everyone else did. I told myself not to take it personally, but I did. And here's the thing. Every time I said nothing, every time I let it slide, it got worse. Because people like that aren't careless. They're deliberate. They're testing how much you'll tolerate. And when you show them you're willing to tolerate disrespect, you train them to keep going. This is where Stoicism comes in. It's not about cold detachment or pretending you don't care. That's the common misconception. Stoicism is about knowing where your power is. As Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." You cannot control whether someone is rude or dismissive. You cannot stop a person from trying to humiliate you, but you can decide whether they succeed. You can decide whether their words shape your reality or bounce off it. Here's the hard truth most people won't tell you. If you do not respect yourself, no one else will. If you tolerate humiliation, you invite it. Not because you deserve it, but because you've signaled that you'll accept it. Humans are wired to test hierarchies. We all do it, consciously or not. Some people push to see where your line is, and if there's no line, they assume they can walk all over you. It's not always about malice, it's about opportunity, and they'll take it until you take it back. What I learned, what I want you to understand, is that standing up for yourself doesn't always look like confrontation. It's not about fighting or shouting. Sometimes it's a calm, clear boundary. It's choosing not to laugh when a joke is at your expense. It's meeting their eyes and letting silence say what words don't have to. It's removing yourself from rooms where you're not respected, without apology or explanation. That's Stoic strength. Not because it's emotionless, but because it's disciplined. You have to protect your dignity. Not because others will do it for you, but because it's yours to defend. And the moment you do, something changes. People sense it. The ones who used to test you hesitate. They move on, often quickly, because they're looking for an easy target. And you're not it anymore. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify your boundaries. You just have to hold them. And here's where the lesson gets deeper. The respect you gain when you stand tall isn't just from others. It's from yourself. You start to believe in your own strength. You start to trust that you can handle whatever comes your way. Not by controlling the world, but by mastering your response to it. That's what Stoicism offers you. Not a shield to hide behind, but the armor to walk through life upright, unshaken, and dignified. Reason 2, they want control. Humiliation is one of the oldest tools of control. It's subtle at times, sharp and obvious at others. But the purpose is always the same: to make you small so someone else can feel big. When someone publicly shames you, when they throw a cutting remark across a room or expose something personal they have no right to, they are trying to take something from you: your power, your voice, your dignity. They want to see you shrink, because if you shrink, they can stand taller in comparison. But here's the thing most people don't understand. The person who humiliates others is often carrying their own brokenness. They feel powerless in their own life. And instead of confronting it, instead of healing, they reach for the easiest way to feel strong, by making someone else feel weak. I remember working with a colleague who always found a way to put people in their place, often with a laugh, as if that somehow made it acceptable. One afternoon, during a team meeting, I presented an idea I had worked on for weeks. Without hesitation, she cut me off with a sarcastic comment that drew a few uncomfortable chuckles from the room. It wasn't just the words, it was the timing, the precision of it, designed to make me doubt everything I had just said. And for a second, I did. I felt heat rising in my face. I felt the urge to defend myself, to explain why the idea was good, why I belonged there. But I didn't. Because something inside me, call it instinct, or maybe something I'd finally learned, told me the worst thing I could do in that moment was play by her rules. Her power was never in the comment. It was in my reaction. It was in whether or not I believed what she was trying to sell me, the lie that I wasn't good enough to speak. This is where Stoicism offers a truth that can change everything. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." What he meant was this: people will try to humiliate you. They will say things meant to wound you, sometimes in public, sometimes behind your back. You cannot stop them from trying, but you can refuse to let them succeed. They cannot control your mind unless you hand them the reins. When you realize that, when you stop believing the lies they feed you about your worth, their power evaporates. A person who refuses to believe in their own inferiority cannot be humiliated. And that's not because they fight back or get the last word. It's because they know who they are. You can't tear down someone who's built their sense of self from the inside out. You can't silence a person who doesn't need the approval of a crowd to know their value. If you take one thing from this, let it be this: humiliation only works when you allow someone to convince you that you deserve it. You don't, and you never did. The people who rely on humiliation as a weapon are showing you who they are. But you, by how you respond, will show them who you are. And if you choose clarity over confusion, dignity over defensiveness, and mastery over your own mind, you'll find they lose interest. You are not prey. You are not small. You are someone who cannot be controlled, because you control yourself. That's the power Stoicism offers you. Not a shield to protect you from hurtful words, but a mindset so clear and strong that those words pass through like wind through open hands. There's nothing to hold on to when you refuse to give them weight. Reason 3. They envy you. This may be the hardest truth to accept, but it's one you need to hear. Sometimes people humiliate you not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's something deeply unsettled within them. And the very qualities that make you admirable, your strength, your character, your success, become the source of their discomfort. When you stand tall, when you carry yourself with quiet confidence, when you live by principles they abandoned long ago, it forces them to confront everything they lack. And instead of rising to meet that standard, they choose the easier path. They tear you down, not to correct you, but to silence the reminder that they have stopped trying to be more. Psychologists call this malicious envy. It's a darker, more destructive cousin of the basic envy we all feel from time to time. Studies in emotional psychology have shown that malicious envy often triggers what's called schadenfreude, a perverse sense of satisfaction when someone they envy stumbles or falls. They want to see you as less because your presence, your achievements, make them feel like less. But they won't tell you that. Instead, they will find ways to belittle you, undermine you, humiliate you in front of others. Not because they see you as weak, but because they know you are not. Seneca understood this deeply when he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." A person can have everything and still live in poverty if their soul is starved for peace. And so, they strike at others in an attempt to feed their own emptiness. They humiliate what they secretly desire, because it's easier to destroy a light than to find their own. Once you understand this, something shifts inside you. The shame you once felt in those moments starts to dissolve. You stop thinking there's something wrong with you. You stop carrying their bitterness as your burden. And if anything, you begin to feel pity, not in a condescending way, but in a clear, calm understanding that they are battling demons you have no part in. Stoicism teaches that we cannot control what others do, but we can control what we make it mean. And when someone tries to humiliate you out of envy, you don't shrink. You don't make yourself smaller to soothe their discomfort. You stand exactly where you are, rooted in who you are, because their inability to stand in your light is not your responsibility. It never was. If you found these insights valuable, let me know by commenting yes below. Your thoughts matter, and I'd love to hear from you. Reason 4, you haven't set boundaries. If you do not make it absolutely clear what you will and will not accept, people will test you. They won't always mean harm, not at first. It's something wired into human nature. People push boundaries, sometimes consciously, sometimes without even realizing it, because they want to know where the line is, and if they don't find a line, they assume there isn't one. They keep pushing. A joke at your expense here, a casual disregard there, and because you stay silent, because you tell yourself it's not worth the trouble, they keep going. Little by little, they take up more space in your life. Eventually, you look around and realize you are standing in a place that no longer feels like your own. The things you once thought were obvious, that you deserve respect, that your time matters, that your feelings have weight, are no longer the rules by which the relationship works. The disrespect has become normal. You wonder how it got this far, but if you're honest, it started the moment you failed to say, enough. This is why Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. It sounds harsh, but it speaks to a truth most people avoid. Setting boundaries often comes at a social cost. People may misunderstand you. They may think you are difficult, unkind, or arrogant, especially those who were quite comfortable benefiting from your silence. But if you want peace, you cannot always have approval. You cannot seek both. Stoicism teaches us that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of discipline. Peace is knowing where you stand and refusing to move from that spot, even if it means standing alone. Look at the example of Oprah Winfrey. Early in her career, as a young reporter working for a television station in Baltimore, she was told she was unfit for television. Her producers criticized her appearance, her weight, and even the way she spoke. There was pressure to conform, to change who she was in order to fit the mold they had decided was acceptable. It would have been easy to bend, to become what they told her she should be. But instead, she drew a line. She refused to change her authentic self in order to gain the approval of people who couldn't see her worth. Eventually, she was fired from that news position. Some might have seen that as proof she was wrong, but she didn't. Oprah understood what Epictetus was teaching. Sometimes you must be willing to be thought foolish or stubborn, to risk rejection in order to hold true to your values. And we know how her story turned out. Oprah went on to build an empire rooted in authenticity, empathy, and self-respect. She became one of the most respected and influential figures in the world. Not because she bent to fit into someone else's definition of worth, but because she held her ground when it mattered most. That is the essence of Stoicism. You do not set boundaries because others will like you more. You set them because you respect yourself. And when you do, when you calmly and consistently hold those boundaries, people either learn to respect them or they leave. Either outcome is peace. But it's not easy. It means being willing to be seen as foolish or difficult by people who only understand relationships built on silence and sacrifice. True dignity often comes with solitude, but it is a solitude that breeds strength, not weakness. And when you live from that place, when self-respect becomes your foundation, the world adjusts. Those who stay know where the line is, and those who can't accept it, they are no longer your concern. Reason 5. They seek an audience. Humiliation rarely happens in private. It feeds on witnesses. The weak often gather a crowd, not for support, but as silent accomplices in their cruelty. They need an audience to give their actions weight, because without it, their power feels empty. You've seen it happen. Maybe it was in a conference room when someone in charge decided to cut down a colleague, not for a mistake, but to remind everyone who held authority. Or in school when a group ganged up on one quiet kid, not because he was guilty of anything, but because he was an easy target. The one being humiliated isn't chosen because they're weak. They're chosen because they're alone. That's how bullies work. They find those standing alone and test if they can make them kneel. The crowd makes it worse. There is an uncomfortable truth about human behavior. People in groups are easier to manipulate. Psychology calls it de-individuation, the process where people lose their sense of personal responsibility in a crowd. They will laugh when they don't want to laugh. They will stay silent when they should speak, because the fear of becoming the next target silences them. The one who leads the humiliation knows this. They rely on it. Their cruelty becomes a kind of performance, using another person's shame to entertain those too frightened to step in. But what looks like power is, in truth, weakness. A person who must rally others to their side in order to humiliate another is already showing you who they are, someone who cannot stand on their own. Think of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men in history, surrounded by senators, generals, and advisors who bowed in his presence. And yet, Marcus was famous for his humility and restraint. He didn't humiliate or berate others to show his power. In fact, he often reminded himself that the crowd's opinion was worthless if it came from those who lacked understanding. He wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Marcus Aurelius knew that the crowd's approval was fickle, hollow, and often driven by fear, not wisdom. True strength didn't require a chorus of voices to validate it. There is a lesson here. When someone tries to humiliate you publicly, their greatest weapon isn't their words. It's the reaction of the crowd. They want you to feel isolated, to believe that the laughter or silence of others is proof that you've lost. But their laughter is hollow. Their silence is fear, and you owe them nothing. Not an explanation, not a defense, not a piece of yourself. The Stoic path teaches you to stand with dignity, even when surrounded by cowards. To be willing to walk alone rather than follow the crowd. To understand that people who need an audience to feel powerful are never as strong as they pretend to be. And you don't need an audience to know your worth. You don't need the approval of those who cheer for the one with the loudest voice. You need only your own steady mind, your own clear sense of right and wrong, and the discipline to hold yourself upright when everything around you tells you to fall. That is the heart of Stoicism, and that is where real power lives. Not in applause, not in the fear of others, but in the quiet, unshakable dignity of someone who refuses to be made small by the noise of the crowd. If what you just heard resonated with you, give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Because every time I discover a new perspective on life, I want you to be the first to hear it. Reason 6. They sense you do not know your own worth. This is the deepest wound, the one most people carry quietly. The experience of being humiliated before they truly understand their own worth. It often happens early in life or at a moment when we are most uncertain about who we are. And those who seek to humiliate others can sense it, as if they have an instinct for weakness. But not the kind of weakness people imagine. It's not physical or intellectual. It's the weakness of a person who has not yet recognized their own value. Because if you knew who you were, if you were rooted in it, you wouldn't allow anyone to degrade you, not because they wouldn't try, but because it wouldn't land. The insult, the joke, the dismissal would bounce off something solid inside you. Without that sense of self, though, you become vulnerable to the approval and disapproval of others. You bend in the wind of their opinions because you haven't yet decided which way to stand on your own. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." It's a line worth reading twice. Most people think freedom comes from circumstance, status, money, reputation. But real freedom begins with self-mastery. And self-mastery starts with knowing who you are. When you don't know yourself, the world is full of threats. But when you do, you become untouchable, in a way that has nothing to do with arrogance and everything to do with quiet certainty. Consider Eleanor Roosevelt. As a young woman, she was painfully shy. She came from a family that was powerful and deeply dysfunctional. Her mother openly mocked her appearance, calling her granny because of her perceived homeliness. She lost both parents before she was a teenager and was raised by a family that never let her forget how small they thought she was. She could have lived her entire life carrying those humiliations, shrinking into the background as many expected. But she chose not to. Slowly, through education, through work, through understanding her own moral convictions, she built a sense of self that no one could take away from her. As First Lady, she was criticized harshly, both publicly and privately. Her appearance, her opinions, her activism, she was constantly mocked and dismissed by people who felt threatened by a woman stepping outside the role society had assigned her. But she had already done the hard work of deciding who she was. And because of that, the humiliation others tried to lay on her never seemed to stick. She continued to fight for human rights, for justice, for decency, not because people approved, but because she knew what was right. What Stoicism teaches is exactly this: that no one can humiliate you without your consent. That freedom, as Epictetus says, is mastery over yourself. You don't gain it by fighting back against every insult or silencing every critic. You gain it by refusing to give them authority over how you see yourself. When you know your worth, insults become meaningless. Jokes become empty noise. Even admiration doesn't sway you, because your self-respect doesn't depend on whether others recognize it. This is not easy. It takes work. It takes time spent in reflection, in being honest about who you are and what you stand for. It takes a willingness to stand alone when no one else seems to understand. But there is no shortcut to real freedom. You cannot beg people to respect you. You must claim it, quietly, without permission. And when you do, something profound happens. The people who once tried to humiliate you lose interest. The words they used to cut no longer find a place to land. You become, in the deepest sense, untouchable. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. So here's the truth. People may try to humiliate you. Some will test you. Some will envy you. And a few will do it just because they can't handle your light. But here's the good news. You're not here to dim yourself for anyone. Not anymore. You are not someone who begs for respect. You command it quietly, calmly, and if need be, alone. That's the Stoic way. When you stand your ground, when you refuse to believe the lies meant to make you small, something powerful happens. You become untouchable, not because the world is kind, but because you are strong. So if you're ready to live with that quiet power, to rise above the noise, I invite you to take this journey with me. Hit subscribe, tap that bell, and join a community that's learning to stand tall, no matter who tries to pull them down.